Senate shutdown ends after moderate Democrats side with the GOP. Um, I don't need to paint too much of a picture for you, so I won't. But yeah, the government's been shut down. This is the longest government shutdown in history. And for the most part, Democrats were trying to work to save healthcare for millions of Americans. And the GOP has not really operated in good faith with respect to the Democrats' position. And so Democrats had this one single iota of tenuous power that they were wielding to try to protect Americans. And they have reached their conclusion. I'll let you know what happened. So this from the BIN. The longest federal government shutdown in U.S. history is set to end after several moderate Senate Democrats broke party lines and voted with Republicans on Sunday, November 9th, to advance a funding bill that drops Democratic demands to extend Affordable Care Act subsidies per HuffPost. The Senate could pass the deal as early as Monday, November 10th, with the Republican-led House expected to follow later in the week, reopening the government after more than 40 days of closure. This was an article from earlier in the week, of course. For weeks, Democrats had insisted that any government funding measure also include an extension of ACA premium tax credits, which are set to expire at the end of the year. Those subsidies help millions afford health insurance, and their expiration could send premiums soaring. Sunday's deal, brokered by Senator Angus King, the independent from Maine, who caucuses with Democrats, along with Senators Jeannie Shaheen and Maggie Hassan, omits the subsidy extension but guarantees a future Senate vote on the issue. That vote is widely expected to fail given Republican opposition. Joining Shaheen, Hassan, and King in supporting the deal were Senators Tim Kaine, the Democrat from Virginia, Jackie Rosen, the Democrat from Nevada, Catherine Cortez Masto, the Democrat from Nevada, Dick Durbin, the Democrat from Illinois, and John Fetterman, the Democrat from Pennsylvania. All moderates are members of leadership who claim they prioritized ending the shutdown and protecting federal workers. Quote, this deal guarantees a vote to extend Affordable Care Act premium tax credits, which Republicans weren't willing to do, unquote, Kaine said, noting that many federal employees live in his state. Goes on to say, quote, lawmakers know their constituents expect them to vote for it, and if they don't, they could very well be replaced at the ballot box, unquote. The agreement will reverse all federal worker firings made during the shutdown, block further layoffs until January 2026, and boost funding for food assistance programs. Progressives, however, slammed the compromise as a betrayal of Democratic priorities. Quote, it's a terrible mistake, Senator Elizabeth Warren, the Democrat from Massachusetts, said. She goes on to say, people want us to stand and fight for health care, and that's what I believe, unquote. Here's another one, quote, I will not turn my back on the 24 million Americans whose health care premiums will now double or more as a result of the ACA tax credits expiring. This was a quote from Senator Ruben Gallego, the Democrat from Arizona. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries and Congressional Progressive Caucus Chair Greg Caesar, I believe that's or Kaiser. I'm not sure how to pronounce that one. Also condemned the deal, quote, accepting nothing but a pinky promise from Republicans isn't a compromise, it's capitulation. He said, millions of families will pay the price. So, I know that a lot of people for a long time had wanted to see some fight in the Democratic Party. And this was the fight that they could have. You know, all the levers of government are controlled by Republicans. This was the fight that they could have, and there are some people that are now being looked at as sort of like the Judases for betraying the Democratic, push, cohesion team. And these people, I'm sure, will have a way to justify it by saying, look, we need the government open. We need the government to work. This is not our time right now. And we did get a promise to vote on it at a point in the future, but this gets people back to work. This, they built into this deal that everyone that's been fired is going to have their jobs back. So there's two ways of looking at this. Personally, I'll go first before we get your thoughts here, Q. But personally, I think that if you want Democrats to fight, you have to be willing to endure that battle as they fight. So if this is the one area where they can wield some power, I am of the persuasion that they should fight the fight until they win. To see this effort crumble because of these six, uh, I guess, quasi Democrats, it's a sad day, and everybody has to be accountable to their constituents. So if indeed these people's voter base want them to get people back working and get the government open, then I'm sure they won't have a problem when it comes time for their reelection. But people looking at the country as a whole, recognizing that this is a deeply harmful for many people in this country, a deeply harmful regime, sort of runaway train, and this democratic effort was one sort of measure that could have at least applied some sort of brakes or steering or something to that runaway train analogy. To see it fail like this, it just is so deeply disappointing. So, yeah, my thoughts there. Q, yours?
There's a thing I always say, and I can only apply it to movies because, of course, I've never seen this happen in real life. But you ever watch a movie and someone's captured by another country's military, or whoever the enemy is captures them, and then they torture them, and they say no to every question, and they won't answer, and they're not going to give up. But eventually they do something painful enough to them that they give up everything. And I always say, if there's anything they can make you do that'll make you tell at the beginning. Why go through all the torture first?
Yeah.
And that's how I feel about this. Why let almost 1.5 million people go unpaid for over a month, with half that number being furloughed? Why let people in the tens of millions end up with health care that they either can't afford or no health care at all? If you're just going to cave, people going hungry and starving over the holidays, if you were just going to cave, like, there shouldn't have been anything short of what you were demanding that got you to side with Republicans on this. If at any point you would give in. And I want listeners to look into something. I even want us to look into something. And I don't know this for certain. So I'm posing this as a question that I kind of think I know the answer to. Mm-hmm. Because you spoke about people answering to their constituents and the people that elected them. I have a sneaky suspicion that the people that sided with the Republicans are not worried about reelection, either because it's not coming up or because they have no plans to run again. And that makes turning your back on those who got you where you are easy, sure. Especially if there's, the potential for alleged backroom deals and some way for you to profit from the decision that you made. Corporate money has infested our government. Bribes are like a right out in the open thing now. We've seen a very, very compromised Supreme Court. Like, we learned that things happen. It's not alleged. It's not we think so. Now we know for sure. Yeah. Nothing changed. It's really, really Twilight Zone, man. We're watching the most corrupt government, the most openly corrupt government of our lifetime, do whatever they want with impunity. And the Democrats, in this case, it is a whole pack of Judas, turning their back on their people. And it was now all for nothing.
Yeah. I want to add that, again, they all know that Republicans are going to oppose this. So kicking this can down the road, so to speak, so that there can be another vote on it, They know that the vote won't pass. So you're right, Q. They just gave up the health care for millions of Americans. And we know this because this Democratic government has been especially cruel with more than just health care. They've been especially cruel with food. They've been, and so for anybody to consider otherwise would be fooling themselves. And the last point I want to make is that, you're right. This is supposed to be a government by the people, for the people. And, a corporation having an interest in the government, a corporation doesn't have like a, like a death, that doesn't have mortality the same way people do. It doesn't have the sensibilities of human being. And the government should not exist to serve the interests of corporations. It should exist to serve the interests of the people. So you're right, that money and politics thing is really damaging. And we can see it right here on full display, especially if what you say is right and these people aren't up for reelection, or they're people that have a vested interest in, pulling the puppet strings of the representatives that they paid to get in office. So yeah.